All right, folks. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the early start today. We've got a very full agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It is the already April, and we are at the full body meeting for the employee forum. So welcome. April, for those of you who don't know, is Sexual Assault Awareness Month here in the United States. So several of our agenda items are relevant to that topic today. And our first special presentation, which I'm going to present, is Ms. Holly Lovern, the Gender Violence Services Coordinator. She's here to speak to us on university prevention in response to sexual assault and sexual harassment. So welcome, Holly, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Katie. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Sure thing.
All right, can you all see my slides? Awesome. Well, thank you all for having me today. My name is Holly Lovern. I use she, her pronouns, and I really appreciate the invitation to kick off your meeting today because as Katie mentioned, we're also kicking off Sexual Assault Awareness Month this week. So lots of events and programs happening throughout campus. And I'll talk more about where y'all can find more information about that if you're interested in getting involved. But today I plan to briefly share with you all more about the advocacy and support we have available on campus through my role as a Gender Violence Services Coordinator, as well as information about prevention efforts that are happening on campus from my colleagues, the Violence Prevention Coordinators. So I wanted to start off by sharing more about my work as a Gender Violence Services Coordinator. We're called GPSGs for short. There are two of us, so it's myself and Kayla Zollinger. And in our role, we serve as our campus version of a victim advocate. So we provide free confidential support and advocacy for all members of our campus community, including students and employees who have been impacted by sexual violence, interpersonal violence, stalking, exploitation, or sexual and gender-based harassment. And so as a confidential resource, that means that when individuals are connecting with us and sharing their experiences or seeking support, they are not making a formal report to the university or to law enforcement. And that information is going to be staying within our space unless we have either a release of information from that person to share information, or it falls within a scope of conduct that's going to be required by law for us to report. And so we go over our confidentiality with everyone we meet. Our confidentiality statements also on our website so folks can kind of know more about what does that look like and what does that mean for our space before they're connecting with us. We provide a range of services, which include anything from emotional support, help in identifying reporting options and navigating related processes, safety planning, accompaniment to meetings, both with the Equal Opportunity Compliance Office and law enforcement. It can include support for academics, on-campus housing, workspaces, and we do lots of referrals to campus and community partners and resources. And our support is really flexible depending on what somebody is looking for. So sometimes we jump on a call with someone for 15 minutes, answer a couple questions they have and never hear from them again, which is totally fine. And sometimes we'll be working with folks throughout their time at Carolina. So it's really going to be based on what's most helpful for them. Individuals are welcome to reach out to us to connect in whichever format is most comfortable for them. So if they'd like to email, they can send an email to mine and Kayla's joint inbox, which is mentioned on this slide. And they don't need to include anything specific about why they're wanting to meet. We get emails all the time that literally just say, hey, I want to meet with you. And from there, we'll respond to that initial outreach and share more about our confidentiality, our services, and our availability to connect. If folks want to call us, they can also reach out to the number it's listed here. If they reach a voicemail, we just need folks to share a number that's safe for us to return their call so we know that we can access them in a safe way. But again, they don't have to share any specific information in that voicemail beyond they want us to reach out. We're currently meeting with folks via phone, Zoom, or in person, and we really appreciate kind of the increased access that remote and virtual environment has brought us. And so we'll continue to offer those three options for folks. And our offices are located in the Carolina Women's Center, which is in Suite 101 of the Stone Center. But we're also happy to meet with folks wherever they might be more comfortable on campus, because we recognize with us being in the Women's Center that might not be feel accessible for everyone in our campus community. So if you're interested in learning more about our work, you can find more information on our website. And if you're on Instagram, you can find us there too. And so as part of our role, we also offer a lot of outreach, education, and consultation for our campus community. So a lot of times if folks have a question about like maybe how to respond to a professor notification that they received from us on behalf of a student, or maybe a colleague disclosed to them and they're trying to figure out how they can best support, we're here to help with that. And so we often don't need much specific information about who you're trying to support or kind of their experience in order for us to provide you some resourcing and support in doing that. So we always encourage folks, please feel free to call us, and we would love to share insight and kind of help you navigate whatever you're thinking you might like some support with. We also love having the opportunity to meet with different groups, and we're happy to pop in for 10 to 15 minutes like I'm doing here today, or facilitate a longer training or presentation if that's what you're interested in. We mainly focus on topics like supporting individuals who are impacted by violence and harassment, options and resources available on campus, and how we can better create trauma-informed environments across campus, whether that is like in the classroom environment, virtual meeting spaces, or like student organizations. We're also happy to tag team presentations with other offices on campus. So if you're interested in us doing kind of a duo presentation with our violence prevention team or the Equal Opportunity Compliance Office, please feel free to reach out, and we're happy to coordinate and discuss what you might be looking for. We also have a couple of different resources I wanted to make sure that I mentioned here today. One being a healing library that we launched after we kind of returned back to the office from the pandemic. And this is a library specific to our offices and space where folks can check out books that are related to experiences of violence, trauma responses, and healing. And we've seen folks have some really great interest in being able to just kind of access information in different ways. So we have a list of our books that are available, and folks can reach out to us through our website if they're interested in checking one out. And then we've also been working in the last year or so to really think through how we could increase our digital resourcing on our website so that if folks aren't comfortable reaching out to us or can't, they can still get some information about things that we often receive questions and inquiries about. So we've created a therapy support guide that offers information about how to find a therapist and considerations for starting therapy that includes info about resources that are specific to our campus and the community, but also really centers trying to help folks access trauma-informed therapy and providers. Another resource I wanted to make sure I definitely mentioned today is that we've created a faculty guide for supporting students impacted by violence and harassment. And so a lot of times when we send out a professor notification, we'll receive an email back from faculty. They're expressing their support. They're really glad that students have reached out, but they're like, I don't know exactly what it looks like to be trauma informed in my classroom, or I really want to support the student, but I don't know exactly what that might be. And so we've tried to compile kind of practices that we've seen across classes, across disciplines on our campus, and offer some ideas and considerations for professors and faculty to think through. So when you are thinking about how do I create kind of a more trauma-informed learning environment, or how can I best support a student, there's some ideas already there. And you can kind of take what makes sense for you in your class and tailor other ideas. But we also welcome folks to always reach out to us in cases like that. If they have questions, we're happy to brainstorm, what could this look like for your class specifically? We are definitely not the experts across disciplines or fields, but there are, I think, a lot of strategies that can be used kind of generally in the learning spaces. And we want to make sure we can support you in thinking through what is that balance of upholding learning objectives and goals for courses, but also providing students with that flexibility and support. So again, all these resources I've been mentioning are on our website, and we're happy for you to share those, download them, and use them how you can. So I wanted to also shift a little bit into the prevention side of things. So unfortunately, my colleagues weren't able to join this morning, but our prevention work on campus has shifted in a bit the last couple years or so, and our new violence prevention coordinators started this past November. So Shelley and Sloan oversee campus-wide awareness, education, and prevention efforts related to violence and harassment. And that's ranging from everything from our One Act bystander intervention program, the Haven support training that I know a lot of employees on our campus have taken, and then various programming around healthy relationships and consent, which they might do in like a department, they might do with a student organization. So really just any group that's interested in having these conversations. They also are helping coordinate programming across the university for the different awareness months. So that includes this month, April, Sexual Assault Awareness, January, which is Stalking Awareness Month, and then Relationship Violence Awareness Month in October. They're also really helping oversee a lot of the student engagement around this work. So they recently have just created a student advisory board that has undergraduate and graduate and professional student representation who are really helping inform prevention work and what they want to see on our campus. And they're currently interviewing students for a peer ambassador and education program, because we know that peer-to-peer education is really important when it comes to prevention. So if you're interested in connecting with them, you can email them. They would love to talk with you about what prevention might look like for your space or your group or department. And then they're also on Instagram as well. And one other thing I really wanted to make sure to point out for the prevention kind of side of the house is that we had a gender-based violence prevention advisory group, which was charged in June of 2020 to look at current and future violence prevention work on campus and draft recommendations for the next few years. And so this is something that the violence prevention folks are looking at, making sure that their work is aligning with the recommendations and kind of the work that group has done. And this is an ongoing group that continues to meet, and it's comprised of students, faculty, and staff. And we developed a report in 2020 that lays out a lot of these recommendations and kind of next steps. And you can find this information about the group and the report on the Safe at UNC website. And so I just mentioned the Safe at UNC website, and that's the one I always like to close out any presentation with, because it's really the greatest online hub we have for information about response, support, prevention, and you can find a lot of the information I mentioned here on this website. And so at the very top right now, you'll see there's a banner. If you click on that banner, that's where you're going to be able to access the Sexual Assault Awareness Month calendar we have and programming that's going on. So we have a couple events coming up this week and then throughout the rest of the month. And we would love to have you all there and joining us if you're interested. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have if we have time.
Me too, indeed. So questions for Holly? Jacob.
Hi, excuse me. Good Lord, this might be the first thing I said this morning. Good morning. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. I know that in my building we have quite a bit of kind of older materials that are like posted around restrooms about contacting you, but a lot of it's pretty dated. I think most of it's like pre-2019, and again, obviously, just your thing there. Do y'all have any? Is there an easy way to find physical resources so that we could post those kind of positions in like restrooms and other common spaces?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Feel free, if you want to reach out to the email I had, gpsg@unc.edu, we can make sure that we coordinate with our Equal Opportunity and Compliance Office. They have probably the posters you're maybe referring to, the big campus-wide posters. They have those available. They have all updated brochures that have like all the campus resources. And then we have like our Gender Violence Services resource card as well. So if you send an email, we'd be happy to coordinate and get that to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jacob. Arlene.
Can you post your social media address again? Because
Yes.
it went by so fast, I couldn't write it down.
Let me put it in the chat actually, so that way you all have it.
Excellent. Other questions? No? Well, again, thank you so much, Holly, for coming out this morning and talking to us. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate your help on the upcoming resolution that we're going to talk about later in the meeting. So thank you very much for your expertise.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. And if you all have any questions moving forward, definitely feel free to reach out. We're happy to chat. So
we will definitely
see y'all's meeting.
Excellent. Thanks, Holly.
Bye.
All right. So next up, let me check. Make sure they're here. We have Clery Compliance Manager Jenn Scott and Director of Emergency Management Darrell who are here to talk to us about the Alert Carolina system. We really appreciate you coming by. So Darrell and Jenn, just by way of kind of context, came and spoke to the Personnel Issues Committee and gave a great presentation that was helpful in kind of contextualizing the Alert Carolina notices that go out to campus. So we thought it would be helpful information for you all to hear as well. So welcome back. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you again for the invite, Katie. It's a pleasure to join you all this morning. Absolutely excited about sharing the resources that we have on the campus safety side with regard to our Alert Carolina system. Hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. All right, awesome. So the Alert Carolina system and Clery Act overview, I'm sure you all are already generally familiar with our emergency notification system, and in the form of providing continued awareness and education about the system, what it is, what it is not, what it is intended for. This allows us to create partners across campus who can help promote a sense of preparedness and awareness so that we'll be prepared as to how we're going to receive notifications and what actions we need to do to take depending on the type of notification that is received. So our Alert Carolina system is just that. It's an emergency notification system. And based on the 2008 Higher Education Opportunity Act, the Clery Act, it does mandate and require that higher education institutions have a system in place by which we immediately notify our campus community anytime that there is confirmation of a significant emergency or dangerous situation that poses some form of threat or threat to health or safety to our campus community. And the intent of that is so that you can be informed as to what actions you need to take should that occur. As an overview of our system, we have 4 different alert types, and this is critically important so that you can distinguish and really understand when you receive a different type of alert, the severity of the situation and whether or not immediate action is needed or more of awareness and follow-up action may be needed on your end. The highest tier is our emergency notification. That is an indication that there is a significant emergency or dangerous situation that is posing an immediate threat to our campus community. And that requires immediate response action on your end to safeguard yourself. That is the only alert type that you will hear the outdoor sirens on campus also activated in conjunction with the other components of our Alert Carolina system. So with the exception of the 3 siren tests that we do throughout the year in the fall, spring, and summer, if you hear the outdoor sirens activate, that is an indication that there is an emergency taking place and immediate action is necessary. And we encourage you, if you hear them, to then turn your attention to either your mobile device to check your email or the text message so you can see the details of what is taking place and what actions you need to take. Situations that would warrant this would be an armed or dangerous person on campus. If we had a major hazardous materials incident, anytime the National Weather Service issues a tornado warning for our campus community area. And I want to distinguish between a tornado warning and a watch, a warning indicating that confirmed tornado or radar is indicating that a tornado is developed in our area. And there may be other dangerous emergency situations that our campus safety officials determine would warrant us activating this highest tier. The next is our crime alerts, and Jenn is going to talk more extensively about the crime alerts and the conditions under which we would have to issue the crime alerts. But this is not necessarily an immediate threat, but there is something that has occurred that is posing a serious or continued threat on our campus. And so we want to share that information with you so that you can take necessary precautions to minimize you from becoming victimized in a similar fashion. These are the list of Clery crimes that we have to notify and issue a crime alert for. Our third is our adverse conditions. This includes adverse weather. So in the winter, anytime we have to move to a condition 1, condition 2 because of winter weather or hurricane season, we would issue an adverse conditions notification to advise that we're changing our campus operating conditions and we're either suspending or we are operating under reduced operations on our campus. In addition to weather events, we also would issue adverse conditions notification if there is a major campus utility outage or failure. So if we lost power, across campus for an extended period of time, water or some other major utility, we would use this alert to advise our campus. And then the catch-all is our informational. For this one, it's basically, it can be a follow-up to a previous notification that we sent out, an update on a crime alert, or something that doesn't rise to the level of a threat or a significant ongoing activity, but it is of interest to our campus community. And so we want to share that with you, information with you, so that you can be aware. Some weather examples of that is if we have a tornado watch or a severe thunderstorm warning, then you'll receive an informational, and that comes in the form of an email. We don't issue text for informationals, but we do post it in the email and on our website. I'll turn it over to Jenn to talk a little bit about our Clery Act requirements.
Good morning, everybody. So the Clery Act requirements are kind of a little bit of a smaller subset of our Alert Carolina notification efforts. The Clery Act determines the circumstances under which we are required to send crime alerts and emergency notifications, just those two types of messaging. When we send crime alerts, we're talking about Clery qualifying crimes on Clery Act geography. And so when we talk about Clery qualifying crimes, those are the ones that you saw in the list on Darrell's previous slide, things like arson, aggravated assault, stalking, burglary, some sex offenses, hate crimes. It is a limited set of the types of offenses that can occur. And it also has some restrictions as to where they occur. The university is required to send these alerts only when these incidents occur on property that the university owns or controls, right? So if they're happening in a parking deck, in a residence hall, in an academic building, on a street that runs through our campus, that's Clery qualifying geography. But we're not going to see crime alerts go out when things occur in apartments, right? Private residences, all of the social establishments that might border or edge up to campus that are frequently used by our students, but they're not under the university's control. So, emergency notifications are much broader in that they cover a wide variety of types of things, but Clery Act crime alert requirements are much more specific than just things that are happening that the student or that the campus community is interested in. So it has to be a particular type of incident that occurred in a particular location that poses as a serious or ongoing threat, as Darrell previously mentioned. And this is a case-by-case analysis of what's happening, right? What are the particular circumstances of a situation, and do they pose a serious or ongoing threat? Some questions or pieces of information that we might use to make that determination. Was there a weapon involved in the offense, right? That's going to raise the level of potential danger. Do we have a suspect who's been identified or in custody, right? Even if an armed robbery has occurred right beside the old well, if that individual was then arrested on scene, they are no longer posing a threat to the campus community. They're in custody. That situation is going to be adjudicated as it will. So if we have an offender in custody, we're not likely to send that crime alert message. We're also going to look at if we have an offender who's known direction of travel. So let's say we had a motor vehicle theft outside the Dean Dome, right? And we know that that person has driven away from campus, in towards Durham, for example. Again, might not be a serious or ongoing threat. The other factor that we assess when we send crime alerts is whether or not the incident has been reported to us in a timely manner. How long ago did this incident occur? Folks report things that they experience when they are ready to do that. And it is not always immediately after it has occurred. It can be days, weeks, or months after something has occurred that someone comes forward to report it. We see this often with folks who are experiencing sexual or relationship violence, and that's okay, right? People have the right and the freedom to report things when they're ready. But if we're receiving a report of an incident that is weeks, days, months in the past, we typically don't send those alerts because that incident is no longer posing a threat to the campus community. It's something that has occurred in the past. Where we might shift that assessment is if we start to see a pattern of things occurring, right? So if we start to see multiple burglaries in a residence hall, after, if we saw multiple burglaries after sporting events, or we saw, a one individual in the same location committing repeated acts of violence, we now have a pattern of behavior that would trip the Clery Act's ongoing threat requirement. So there may be some circumstances where each individual incident that was part of that pattern was not at that moment that serious threat, right? Because they were either delayed reporting for a variety of valid reasons. Generally, when you have incident number one in a pattern, you don't know if it's going to become one until it is. So that pattern may trip some of these requirements, even though the individual events within that pattern assessed among themselves may not have been a serious ongoing threat. We cannot send messaging to the campus community if it would in any way compromise efforts to either assist the folks who've been impacted by what's going on, endanger their safety, right? Endanger the safety and comfort that they feel in pursuing the investigation of the incident. If it would otherwise compromise efforts to investigate, right? If it would compromise the ability to gather evidence or conduct interviews, things like that. We cannot send messaging if it's gonna make it harder to then investigate or mitigate the danger, right? We cannot send messaging that would compromise efforts to keep people as safe as we possibly can. If we're looking at a circumstance where notifying the community may elevate the danger that the individual impacted parties are in, right? Or that the campus community as a whole is in, we cannot send those messages. Because the purpose of crime alerts and emergency notifications is to enable and empower people to take steps to ensure their safety. So the last thing we want to do is the opposite of that and makes folks feel less safe. We also cannot and will not include information in a message which identifies a victim, right? So you're never going to see a specific room number, a specific office location, names of individuals, or other specific information that would compromise the victim's anonymity in that moment. We'll go to the next slide, please, Darrell.
To talk a little bit about the components of our Alert Carolina system, I won't call them all out, but we did want to advise that we use a number of mechanisms to ensure that you have the ability to receive an Alert Carolina notification regardless of your location. But I already indicated the outdoor sirens. We use the email, text, our website, social media, and website banners. So the list that you see on the left-hand side are components that make up the primary Alert Carolina system. But we also tap into external outlets that we can also connect to and relay those information for the alerts through those means as well. So you can see a list of those. One that I would highlight is the third bullet item, our Carolina Ready mobile safety app. And I believe we've spoken with this committee before about that mobile safety app. So another benefit of downloading that app is you will receive push notifications of Alert Carolina. And even if someone does not have a UNC Onion, so they could not sign up to receive a text notification, if a parent or loved one downloaded our Alert Carolina mobile safety app, they can also receive those notifications just for awareness purposes of any activity that may be taking place on our campus. If you go to the Alert Carolina website, you'll see a breakdown of the 4 different alert types and the mechanisms or tools that we use to issue alerts for each of those. So all of the communication methods that we have we tap into each of those for an emergency notification. And then we gradually would drop off on those depending on the severity of it. So for crime alerts, informational adverse conditions, you'll notice that we don't necessarily use all of the components. And the intent of that is to convey the severity of the situation. So as I mentioned earlier, sirens outside, text message, you want to pay attention to that alert and you want to look at the details of it so that you'll know what actions you need to take. A lot of information on this side, but this is simply just to illustrate that to maintain the operations of our Alert Carolina system, it is a team effort. And so it's not just emergency management, it's not just campus police, but we work with partners across our campus community just to ensure that the technology, the framing and messaging that we use with the message that goes out and the effectiveness of the system remain relevant for our campus community. And so we have a general oversight that falls up under campus safety and risk management. Primarily, my office is responsible for that. But we rely heavily on our partnership with ITS because, as you can imagine, technology continues to change, and we want to incorporate a new advanced technology into the system as is relevant so that we can maximize the opportunities for you to receive those notifications regardless of your location. And then we have those who have the authority to activate the system, those who actually operate it. And we work with an advisory group as well that helps advise on the policy that dictates how we function with regard to our Alert Carolina system. And so we work with a host of partners. That includes representatives from students, faculty, staff, student affairs, university communications, and a host of others. So it is, again, a group effort just to make sure that the system remains effective for our campus community. And then finally, I wanted to walk through the general process anytime we activate the system. And this one is using a scenario where we have a situation that would warrant an emergency notification. So you would have an incident or emergency occur. Typically, the notification would go to our campus police dispatch 911 center, and they would dispatch our officers out to the scene. Once they confirm that there is, in fact, a situation that is warranting an emergency notification, an activation authority, being the police chief or a supervisor on duty, can authorize our dispatchers to initiate activation of the system. And then once that occurs, you'll receive your notification using all the various means that I highlighted earlier. Anytime we issue an emergency notification through Alert Carolina system, you should maintain your posture of either sheltering in place, evacuating, etc., until you receive an all clear from Alert Carolina. So reports from others or hearing on the news that the situation has been mitigated, if you have not received an updated text message or have not heard the sirens reactivate to indicate that there is an all clear, you should again maintain whatever posture you have taken to safeguard yourself until that is issued, because we will never issue an emergency notification and not follow up with an all clear at the point at which campus safety officials have determined that the threat no longer exists on our campus. So if you're off campus and you receive that emergency notification, you should remain off campus until the all clear is received. If you're on campus, shelter in place, evacuate, whatever the directive is, until that all clear is issued. Closing points, campus safety, it takes all of us. And so we want to ensure that this is a collective effort. That's why we're here with you all. That's why you invited us. And so we thank you for the partnership, and we thank you for being ambassadors for safety on our campus. And so please make sure, if you're not already registered, to receive the Alert Carolina text alerts and encourage others to do so. Help us promote the awareness about the Alert Carolina system. There are misinterpretations and understandings, misconceptions about what the system is, what it is not, when we activate, when we don't activate, some of which people have subjective thoughts about when we should activate the system, but we really follow more of an objective approach to when we would activate it. So help create some awareness around what the system is intended for, and then also individual preparedness among our campus community. And then finally, we realized that for the system to remain effective for you, the receiver of those notifications, we have to be open to feedback on how we can improve that system. So please reach out to us, send an email, call us. If you have any suggestions or thoughts about how we can improve and be more effective in communicating to you, our campus community, how what situations are occurring on our campus and what actions you should take. With that being said, I will turn it back over to Katie, and I want to thank you all for this opportunity for us to join you on today.
Thank you so much, Darrell. All right, questions for Darrell and Jenn. I do have one in the chat that I'll convey. So this person says, I don't have all the facts, but several BIPOC undergraduate students told me a story of being on campus when armed members of a racist group were in the pit during the day. The only way they heard about that was through informal warnings from BIPOC friends to stay away from the area. If UNC grants a license to groups like this, it seems that campus should be alerted. And they said they think it was in 2020.
Okay, I want to make sure that a part of that mention armed individuals on campus?
Yes.
Okay, I do want to just note that you are not allowed to have weapons on campus. And so anyone, if anyone who, if you find that someone has a weapon on campus, you should definitely notify campus police immediately so they can respond and address that situation. I would have to see the details to reference that specific incident, but I was talking generalities about what I understand to be the context of it. In the absence of the weapon itself, if that in fact occurred, that is illegal. Not necessarily every situation where someone is on campus with a weapon would necessarily warrant activation of the system. The officers would respond and they would use their discretion to determine if the individuals are compliant and acknowledge and leave the area. There is no longer a threat in the area. So we would not necessarily notify the campus community. There may be a follow-up acknowledgement. An example of that would be an informational message just to inform the campus community of the situation that occurred and what actions were taken to mitigate it. But that wouldn't necessarily warrant an emergency notification. If there was determined to be an immediate or ongoing threat, then that would trigger us activating the systems. Now, I do want to separate. So if we pull the weapon out of the system, out of the situation, you have groups that have various viewpoints that we have to, as a public institution, be open to free expression on campus. And so you may disagree with ideologies. And so because a particular group that shares an ideology is on campus and exercising their First Amendment right, we wouldn't necessarily activate the system to notify the campus community of a particular group that is on campus. But if it meets any of those criteria, if there is an immediate threat, a significant or ongoing threat, or some other public safety concern, then we would definitely utilize our system to advise the campus community. Hopefully that addresses the question.
Thanks, Darrell. And then I got a follow up in the chat. What about the threat to BIPOC persons if the KKK was given a permit to meet and speak?
The threat for
BIPOC individuals, Black, Indigenous, people of color.
Okay. So I would go back to my previous statement about ideologies and people who represent various groups. We understand that there are sensitivities and even real perceived threats that people have and concerns because of what various groups may represent. But we also have to be cautious on our end to make sure that we are not infringing on the rights of free expression on all ends, even if we disagree with them. If, however, there is a true threat that anyone feels or is experiencing, we don't want you to delay in notifying campus police so that we can respond and we can address the matter. But we also want to acknowledge the fact that we're going to have people who share various viewpoints and thoughts that may be on campus representing those thoughts to express those. We want to draw a distinction between people sharing thoughts and opinions about their ideology, and then real threats. And we don't want the campus community, particularly our students, to have any reservation in reaching out to us if you feel any concerns because of individuals and actions that are taking place.
I guess the thought behind it is a prevention effort so that students can know about kind of these folks are on campus, and if they don't feel safe coming to campus, they would have the awareness and knowledge beforehand to know and make informed decisions. So I think that that's kind of the effort here, is to try and figure out a way to put all of the information out there that this group has been granted a permit or is planning to speak on campus, like somehow to give everyone the awareness and tools they need to feel safe on our campus community.
Thank you for that clarification. I will take that information. That would be a tool separate from the Alert Carolina system to communicate, but we can certainly talk with our partners in student affairs to see what opportunities may be out there for us to provide any awareness to our campus community if there are going to be any planned activity, so that people, if they feel more comfortable to avoid that area, they can certainly have the information to do so.
Great, thanks, Darrell.
Katie,
Yes.
this is Amy Johnson. I just signed on a few minutes ago and may have some information that responds directly to that if it's appropriate in terms
It is very appropriate. You're welcome to bring that forward.
All right, so as folks may know, this has been a request that the university has received for some time, and one of the things that we are working both with Derek and our colleagues in IIRM, as well as our colleagues in IT, to create a resource for this. As Derek has rightly noted, we do need to do something different from the Alert Carolina system, because that is a very particular thing that has to respond to specific issues. However, sending out a more discretionary notice about this group may be on campus, please be aware, there may be sensitive messages or images shared, and avoid the area as you like, is something that we are working on as an opt-in tool that the university could sign up for. We are right now, our Rave software, I'm going to quickly get out of my element here in terms of talking about IT, so I will only touch on it very briefly, but our Rave software, which underpins such a system, currently doesn't have the ability to sort of divvy up messages in quite the way that we need it to have both the Alert Carolina and its specific needs met and this more sort of discretionary system. But they have recently made some upgrades, and the university is signing on, and I understand doing some testing this semester to do that. And I have coordinated with Mike Barker and his team just as soon as that's available to try to develop something. So more to come on that, but right now we're waiting on the technology to be able to do what we want to do. So I share that just in case it's helpful.
Technology, but yes, that is very, very helpful. Thank you for that update. Other questions for Darrell and Jenn? I did have another question in the chat, just kind of tangentially related. Who grants groups approval to come onto campus and speak? Does anybody know that?
So with regard to facility and space requests, those typically are handled through either the union or facilities, and it depends on the location that the group wants to host the event. And so that information is on site. There is a request form that has to be submitted, and there are several partners on campus that would have to support an event that have the opportunity to review that. And then once that is determined, then the approval goes to the requester, and then the appropriate or necessary notifications will go out. Great.
Time for one last question, Arlene.
This may be a question that's, again, technology is not ready for it, but a way to go, hi, I am X distance from campus, therefore I do not need these informational alerts. I don't know if the technology can support that or not.
So specifically for the Alert Carolina system, the notifications that we send out, we do not put geographical boundaries around those because it becomes difficult on our end if someone is off campus, wants the alert so they can avoid coming on campus, versus someone who is off campus doesn't want the alert. So we'd rather everyone get it, and then you can use your own discretion whether you want to dismiss it or that is relevant for you. But we do encourage you, if you are affiliated with the university, we definitely encourage you to sign up, because you never know what situation may occur where that notification could be life-saving for you or others.
There are also some Clery Act reasons why we don't limit the geographical scope of those notifications. And part of that is because the university has spaces and places that students are frequenting all over the state and all over the country, research facilities, internship sites, field sites, et cetera. And those are all subject to those notification requirements. And so we need the system to be able to share that information if something is occurring in one of those spaces that's not necessarily in our immediate Chapel Hill bubble. And that's another reason that we don't put those boundaries on that technology.
I did want to quickly add, and I appreciate the comment in the chat about Alert Carolina being an opt-in. It is an opt-in for the text alerts. If you have a University Onion, then you're automatically in the system to receive email notifications. So you can't opt out of receiving the email notifications, but to receive the text notifications, you do have to opt into that.
That's great. Excellent. Well, thank you both again for coming out today and giving us this really helpful information. And thank you both for all the work you do to keep our campus community safe. We appreciate it. All right, so next up, I'm going to introduce our next two speakers. We have graduate and professional student current president Theodore Nollert and the immediate past president Neel Swamy. But before I hand it over to them to speak, I wanted to take a few seconds to recognize that this week is Graduate and Professional Student Appreciation Week on campus. I myself work in a professional school and see all of the hard work that these students put into Carolina, and we are so appreciative of you. And I personally am appreciative of Neel and now of Theodore and the work that they do on GPSG. So thank you for being here today, and we are so glad to hear from you. So I'll let you both take it away.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Katie. I speak for Theodore and myself when I say we're both very excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity to talk with the Employee Forum about the work of GPSG. I will preface and say that if I sound a little bit nasally, it's because the pollen is acting up. I am one of those people who, in a very timely fashion, got my car washed the week before the pollen storm, and I do not have a garage. So we are navigating that. This discussion is sponsored by Allegra, if you will. And what I'm going to do, Katie, is I'll do everyone's favorite thing during a Zoom meeting and ask if people can see my screen, which I believe you can. So, all right. So Theodore and I, as I said, are grateful for the opportunity to speak a little bit about the work of the graduate and professional student government and hopefully elucidate some of the ways in which Theodore's administration can potentially work with you all in the Employee Forum as a whole in the year ahead. So we'll start with some introductions. My name is Neel Swamy. I'm a third-year Doctor of Pharmacy candidate in the Eshelman School of Pharmacy, and as Katie mentioned, served as the GPSG president for the 2021 to 2022 academic year. And I'm joined by Theodore Nollert, who is a PhD candidate in the Department of English and Comparative Literature. And Theodore, as of today, is in full capacity as GPSG president. I have no doubt that you will thoroughly enjoy working with him and his team in the year to come. And I couldn't be more proud in terms of handing it off to someone who I know will continue to lead this organization in a way that is productive and meaningful for all graduate and professional students at Carolina. So I do want to provide some overview about the graduate and professional student body at Carolina. We are incredibly diverse, both academically and beyond the scope of our academics. So currently, as of fall 2021, I should say, we have over 100 master's degree programs and over 60 doctoral degree programs, as well as 7 professional degree programs. So just from an academic standpoint, you can appreciate that Carolina's graduate and professional students are working on a variety of disciplines each and every day, and no two graduate and professional students have the same exact academic experience. So my day-to-day as a student in the pharmacy school may look very different from Theodore's day-to-day as a doctoral student in the Department of English and Comparative Literature. Some doctoral students may be here as PhD students, and they may be receiving stipends to the university, and as a result hold roles where they are not only taking classes, but also teaching classes or directly working with undergraduate or other graduate students in instructional modes. Whereas me as a professional student, I might be primarily taking coursework and then completing clinical rotations during the summer or during the final year of my program. And so I say that all to say that we are an incredibly diverse population. And one of the challenges as well as opportunities for GPSG is to make sure that we are advocating around the needs of all graduate and professional students and recognizing how that diversity contributes to the larger experience that graduate and professional students have while at Carolina, because there is not one size fits all model. And given that many graduate and professional students are maybe not coming to graduate school directly from their undergraduate careers and are also living off campus as opposed to maybe living exclusively in their residence halls, we wear a few different hats within and beyond campus. So in addition to being students and learners, we're also caregivers, teachers, staff, local community members. We regularly hear from our graduate and professional students that they are directly impacted by policies and changes that take place in the larger Durham, Chapel Hill, and Carrboro communities. This has been especially true amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, when graduate and professional students have navigated mask mandates, vaccine expectations, similarly to how I know all of you have had to do as employees at the university, who are also very closely tuned into the larger surrounding community and issues that happen there. To give you some overview of how the GPSG is structured, I joke that for better and worse, we are structured very similarly to the United States federal government. So we consist of 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. And in the full gamut have checks and balances that regulate those authorities and powers. I think one of the gifts of having this structure is that we have the ability to recruit a large number of student leaders from different disciplines across campus. So in our executive branch, just in our executive board and cabinet, we have a team of 18, but our Senate consists of over 110 graduate and professional students from across 77 academic departments. We just had our April monthly Senate meeting yesterday, and that was a space where students of all disciplines and backgrounds can get together to deliberate on issues that affect the larger graduate and professional student body. And we really do believe that the Senate is a special place where, it's not common that we have that space where so many different graduate and professional students come together with a shared purpose. And so I will plug that if the Employee Forum is ever looking for a space to make their needs or concerns aware to the larger graduate and professional student body, the Senate may be a great place to do that. And I know Theodore and his team are actively thinking about how they can make the Senate a more meaningful and engaging place for those students who take on that role. Within the executive branch, as I mentioned, we have an 18-member with the president executive board and cabinet. So we have 6 executive board members who are listed up top in those colored boxes. And then each executive board member oversees multiple cabinet directors, with each cabinet director overseeing a particular functional area of GPSG's advocacy portfolio. So to give you an example, the Vice President for Communications on our executive board oversees our Director of Assessment and Director of Digital Media. Our Director of Assessment works very closely with the GPSG team to make sure that when we're conducting surveys or assessing the needs of the graduate and professional student body, perhaps in a more quantitative and qualitative way, that we're doing so in a way that's robust and effective. Whereas our Director of Digital Media really serves as a steward of our online presence to ensure that we are making our organization aware to students beyond just the meetings that we're having maybe in person. And so as I close out my term, yesterday was my last day as GPSG president, I can't help but reflect on some of the accomplishments that my team and I have achieved this year. As I'm sure you all are aware, as employees of the university, this year has been especially unique in that we've been navigating the ongoing implications of a pandemic while also trying to move back to what was our old way of normal, if you will. And so some of the accomplishments listed on the slide that I want to elaborate on: our Senate created an emergency relief fund for graduate students whose academic timelines were disrupted by the pandemic. So we allocated $80,000 to graduate and professional students who had new academic needs or timeline needs as a result of the pandemic. When the campus safety and security fee was increased from $30 per student per year to $60 per student per year, that was per a UNC system mandate. We worked closely with senior administrators and staff to articulate how students may want to see that additional funding used. And we were very pleased and grateful that senior administrators allocated that increased funding towards interpersonal violence prevention, mental health resource triaging, and off-campus transportation needs for students. And so that was, I like to think of an example of where student government was able to actively participate in those deliberations in a way that was productive. And I'll also add that I, as president of the GPSG, represented the graduate student body on the search committee for our executive vice chancellor and provost position. That was a phenomenal opportunity to make sure that when we were recruiting candidates and inviting them to campus, that they were actively thinking about how the provost team and office can work with the graduate and professional student body and make sure that those needs are considered in that role. This year, the GPSG launched a presidential leadership council, which convenes presidents of 19 different graduate-led student organizations across campus. And the goal was to simply bring student leaders together, even in a virtual format, to make sure that different organizations can have their needs heard. I'm so proud of the group that was assembled that year. We actually have our last meeting this evening, so looking forward to that. In fall 2021, we worked closely with Vice Chancellor Johnson and her team in the Mental Health Summit and presented on some of the anecdotal needs that graduate and professional students have shared with the GPSG. I know from looking at the Zoom call that some of you were at that summit, and I hope that you found that meaningful and impactful as you think about how you're supporting yourselves and one another, and perhaps the students you work with in their mental health needs. And then yesterday, during our final Senate meeting, we introduced some legislative changes to try and restructure our Senate in a way that is better aligned with our organizational goals. So again, these are some of the accomplishments. None of this would be possible without the larger team. And I know much of this is due to the advocacy that Katie Musgrove and Mimi Chapman of the Faculty Council have given. And so we are so grateful for this partnership. And we hope that as we continue to grow as an organization, that the Employee Forum will continue to be an ally for us to ensure that our populations, as much as they may have diverse needs, are also coming together when there are common issues that affect all of us. And with that, I will turn it over to Theodore to elaborate on his goals for the year, et cetera.
Great. Thanks, Neel, and thanks, Katie, and everybody here for having us. I'll try to keep it brief. I'm sure you have a busy agenda, and I know that less time in meetings is good. So we know that there's an all-funds budget that Nate Kaufman has prepared and that has gone to the Board of Trustees. And I think that it would benefit the GPSG and a lot of other groups to have access to that budget, work through it, and then meet with Nate and other folks involved in preparing it to make sure that we understand what it means. I think that having fiscal transparency at the university ultimately benefits all of us, and it benefits the health of the institution. And so I think that probably won't be a tough ask, but I do think it's something we can coordinate with the Employee Forum and undergrad student government, for instance, on requesting and then trying to parse and interpret. Within GPSG, some of the stuff we're thinking about doing, there's a lot of kind of internal procedural stuff we're going to revise that probably isn't super interesting to you, although you're more than welcome to write us if you're interested. But we are going to launch a first-year graduate and professional student mentorship program that's designed to target really a sense of community belonging and kind of more holistic well-being. A lot of programs have professional mentorship opportunities, but they don't necessarily provide someone with a kind of, what is it like to live here? How do I put down roots for the however many years that I'm here? I think it's something like 2 to 7 years potentially for the range of grad and professional students that we have. And so some folks are only going to be here long enough to get to know the place and then go, and other folks are going to be here for a significant chunk of time. And so we're just trying to figure out how to make sure that everybody can feel like this place is home for as long as they're here. We have some system-wide issues that we're coordinating with other institutions on, specifically surrounding things like stipend advocacy, representation of the Board of Trustees, which I know is a state level policy and not a university policy. And so there's an association of student governments that we work with. There are some state advocacy committees at other institutions, and we do meet with legislators as well. We have several partnerships, both with our district legislators and also through these advocacy groups. We're kind of coordinating an approach to grad student issues around the state. So I think that that is perhaps one area where we want to be on the same page with the employee forum as much as we can about the kinds of questions we're asking and the kinds of priorities that we're sharing, particularly when it comes to things like thinking about the fiscal situation for the university and where funding is supposed to come from and when pay gets raised and for whom. Those are things that I think it's really critical that we have really free and open conversation about, to make sure that when a meeting shows up on the calendar, we've talked to all the right people beforehand and don't say anything that turns out not to be a great idea in retrospect because we didn't know some important information. So I'm a huge advocate for having those important conversations early and taking whatever criticism needs to be taken in order to make sure that we have a smart plan and not a well-intentioned but ineffective plan. The last point I want to make is just that we're already, I think, de facto, at any rate, coming out of the modalities that we were used to during the pandemic with probably some long-term shifts. But we have a real sense that grad and professional students, like everybody else, are dealing with the aftermath of a lot of isolation. And so we're thinking, how do we build these physical networks, both for our professional benefit, for informational benefit, but also, just, I don't know a better word for it than a kind of spiritual benefit. I'm not personally a spiritual person, but I don't think it's an aspect of life that can be discounted no matter what beliefs you hold. And I think it's something that requires more sustenance, and that's something GPSG is going to try to provide. So I hope that's a quick and intelligible overview of some of the things that we're hoping to do. There's a great team that has come together for the executive branch. We have a lot of senators who are engaged. And so, in whatever capacity that you interact with graduate and professional students, please feel free to contact me or anybody else and let us know what you're thinking or what you want to know about, and we're happy to engage on it. Katie, I don't know if we should be taking questions now or what the next step is, but.
So thank you both, first of all, and I'm looking forward to working with you, Theodore, this coming year on all of these really important initiatives, partnering with you. And I would just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Neel. I've really enjoyed working with you this past year. I've really appreciated kind of our allyship and speaking at various things like University Day. I know that we're lending each other moral support there and in other ways. So I really enjoyed working with you. Congratulations on a job really well done for this past year. And Theodore, you've got some big shoes to fill, but I'm looking forward to working with you. So with that said, questions for Neel and Theodore? Keith in the chat, I agree. Neel, best human ever. That's very kind. Excellent. Well, again, we look forward to working with you, Theodore. Congratulations, Neel, on concluding your term, and best of luck to you, Theodore, moving forward this year.
Thanks.
Thank you for the time, Katie.
Of course. All right, next up, we have our traditional human resources update with Becky Mangini. And we also have special guest this time, Joe Williams, Director of Benefits and Leave Administration. And we always, as always, have Jessica Pygis with us as well. So welcome, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see everyone. Happy April. Big thanks to Neel and Theodore. I look forward to working with you this coming year. Also want to thank Holly and Jenn and Darrell. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the Equal Opportunity and Compliance Office is also a big part of the campus's response to gender-based violence. We consider ourselves remarkably lucky to work with Jenn and Darrell and Holly and her team in the GPSG group in particular. as I think Holly noted, but just a reminder to all of you, if people experience gender-based violence and wish to report, they can do so through the police, they can do so through the EOC, or they can do either or both if they wish to pursue formal action. And then of course they outline some of the informal actions. I also want to just give a notice that you all will be getting some notice about additional training on gender-based violence. As you'll recall, there is a requirement that employees go through that training every other year. This is different than the training you receive for being a CSA or a responsible employee. Many of you just recently went through that training. It feels like there's a lot of training. I don't think we can ever get enough of it, but I just want to give everyone a heads up that more of that is coming, and you'll see a notice about that in the coming weeks. I don't have a big long list of things for you today. And I know you've got Joe on the docket, and he is the real expert in the benefit space. So I'll try to keep my remarks short, but I do want to note just a couple of things. Well, we're not anticipating a traditional budget structure in the same way. We already know we've got a 2.5% increase coming in July. There is some added discussion at the state level about some additional flexibilities. I'm part of a task force with the Office of State Human Resources, sort of asking questions about ways that we might lend some flexibility on the SHRA employee side. I wish I had lots of updates to share. I don't, none of that's moving particularly quickly, but I will tell you that there are conversations happening at the state level about things that we might do to protect and preserve our employee base and ultimately identify some more resources for financial compensation. I will also note that the Board of Governors is meeting today in Western Carolina, and they are having, as part of their discussion, a conversation about 2 sets of personnel rules, which I'd mentioned previously to this group. One of those is to delegate more authority to the local boards of trustees to take on several of the actions that have required system office or Board of Governors approval. That will ideally speed some things up and limit the number of steps that we have to go through. The question will be, once that, if assuming it passes, the authority is delegated to the Board of Trustees, we will then need to seek authority to have that further delegated to the campus so we can do everything in the HR office, or identify the things that need to happen at the HR office and then the things that need to go to the BOT for approval as opposed to the system office or the Board of Governors. The other change that's coming in those policies, should it happen, is that previous salary would no longer be considered in promotional increases for those, or for in promotional opportunities. This is for EHRA employees. There are conversations happening about how that would, about how we can make similar changes on the SHRA side, but that is not for the Board of Governors to approve. That has to happen with this Office of State Human Resources. But all in all, this is good news. I feel like I've been advocating to get this change. The forum's been advocating to get this particular change for some time. And we're actually at the point where they're taking some action. So bravo, and more to come. What we anticipate will happen is there will be discussion in the Board of Governors meeting today. And then ideally, fingers crossed, it will pass. Then it will go back to the system office to tell us how to implement. So I'd imagine we're another month or so, month or two, probably, before we have guidance on what the implementation is. But we do have some forward progress. I also want to just point out many of your units have submitted their future of work proposals. Those were due at the end of the month, of last month. A handful of units have asked for extensions. We're honoring those. We are then meeting on a weekly basis to review those at the central level and then go back to the units. They then are generally asked to give you 30 days notice before changes go in place, with the expectation that the future of work proposals and the plans would go in place by the end of June. So we are seeing rather significant uptake on that, and we're hopeful that all of you have had the conversations with your supervisors, because there was a plan in those as part of that future of work proposal, that there would be conversations had with everybody about sort of what that could look like, should look like, and may look like moving forward. So big kudos again to Katie and the design team for their work in putting that together, and a whole host of people for rolling that out. And we're optimistic that that will help lend some added flexibility across campus in across a number of units. I also want to give a big shout out to Jessica. I know she's on the team, but also a whole bunch of you who I know participated in the Employee Wellness Day and the joint appreciation event that was held at the tail end of last month. It was a great day to see so many of you out and about on campus. I saw a few of you participating in the inflatable axe throw and the basketball toss. I saw a handful of people getting their medical evaluation inside. I saw a whole bunch of people checking out the various tables and vendors. Lots of people grabbing lunch while they were out there. Probably most exciting to me was to be able to see so many of you, outdoors without masks, which was sort of fun for me. It's been a while. And I also, I'm going to take personal credit for arranging the sunshine that day, but that's about all I contributed. I owe a lot of kudos to a whole bunch of other people, including many of you on this screen, for making that happen. It's nice to get us all back together again and realize some of that community that both Neel and Theodore just talked about. And then just a final reminder, there have been some notices sent out. I believe there's another one coming. Next week on Thursday, it is a student wellness day. As part of that, you'll know, as we've talked about a number of times, we don't have the authority to just grant a full off day for employees, but we have requested that supervisors and managers, to the extent possible, not schedule meetings on Thursday, the 14th of April. And we hope that effort provides a little mental health relief for all of you and the rest of campus, and gives us all an opportunity to perhaps clean out our inboxes a bit before a long weekend. So just a reminder, if you have meetings scheduled on that day and are able to move them around, we encourage you to do so. This only works if all of us do our best to participate, recognizing that there are some positions and meetings that can't be adjusted, but the more we can all contribute to providing a little relief for our colleagues, the better that works.
And I'm looking forward to working with you, Becky, on that front. We reached out to Shereen to try and reschedule the Vice Chancellor meeting that was originally scheduled for that day.
And Shereen is just back after taking her own mental health vacation, so I'm sure she'll get right back on that.
We'll definitely try and reschedule that.
Excellent. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Joe, as I know he's got some benefits updates to provide everybody, with just a big thanks and happy April to everyone.
Thanks, Becky. Welcome, Joe. Thank you for being here. I know we had, just for everyone's context, we had some questions around mental health and telehealth coverage and some kind of confusing messaging going out about that. So we wanted to hear from Joe on clarifying that for everyone. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you all. And I just wanted to just let you know that I did kind of raise the question about the telehealth sort of messaging that was sort of going out. And essentially what was going out was telehealth visits. That's the ones you do on your phone or iPad or virtually. That telehealth visits were not going to be covered. That was kind of what was sort of said to me. And of course, in checking on that, telehealth visits have always been covered on the state health plan. I did reach out to the UNC system office, to the actual state health plan as well, to ask about the telehealth and the future of telehealth visits. Now, what changed during kind of the state of emergency during the pandemic was they changed the reimbursement rates to providers, because they knew most people were not going to go into a doctor's office. And so they made a telehealth visit reimbursable at the same rate as an in-person office visit. Now, one of the things, of course, when you go in office, you see 2 or 3 people sometimes before you get to a provider, right? In that process, in a telehealth visit, you may see 1, maybe 2, and then the provider. So it is sort of a more cost-efficient process, certainly, to do a telehealth visit from the medical standpoint. However, during the pandemic, they kind of boosted up that reimbursement rate to the providers. Now, you and I typically, we're just paying a copay. We don't see all sort of the back end billing, how the state health plan through Blue Cross and Blue Shield, how they manage those reimbursement rates. What has now changed is that the reimbursement rate has gone back down to the normal telehealth reimbursement levels. And so that's really all that's changed. For you and I, we're still paying a copay. We can still do telehealth visits, all day long. We have that option. So really that did not get taken away from us. And, some people say, well, that's not fair to the providers. But again, what you, I think, have to realize is that, medical providers that are certainly providing these services, they've got those kind of negotiated kind of contract rates. And it was just sort of a bonus that they got those higher rates for the telehealth visits during the pandemic.
That's definitely super helpful. It's strange that people were getting a little bit of misleading information there from their providers. So yeah, glad to hear that that's still an option for folks to have opportunities. Do we have questions for Joe on the benefits front? I mean, your benefits is always a hot topic for the employee forum. So I'm sure folks have burning questions for you while we have you as a captive audience. Thank you for being with us so early.
Oh yeah, no problem. Glad to be here. Any questions?
No questions for Joe? Well, thank you again. Like I said, clarifying that for folks is really important because we don't want folks to think that a benefit is no longer available to them that in fact is. So we appreciate it. And thank you for, again, being with us so early in the morning for you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Glad to be here. I'm at a benefits conference this week. It's just been an amazing conference. Susie Orman spoke at this conference about the financial needs, especially from employees, and about the importance of really maybe working through an idea of helping employees set up their own sort of personal emergency fund. And so I kind of look forward to sharing some of these ideas and some of the things I'm learning with my leadership, and then certainly would love to involve the employee forum with some of these ideas on how we can help employees and do a lot better job at really taking care of our employees. So like I said, I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for all the work you're doing, Joe.
Thank you.
Next up, we got Jessica Pydges. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you all who took time out of your Friday on the 18th to attend the Employee Wellness Day, and also to the many of you that helped out that day. That event would not have been possible without you. There were a lot of different activities going on, and all the help was very much needed. Prior to that Friday, we had some virtual opportunities. Monday through Thursday, we had 15 sessions. These were fitness sessions, health education sessions, cooking demonstrations. So those were held prior to the event as we were trying to bring together both the virtual world, but also meet the need of coming together finally in person, which was awesome. We had over 350 people participate in our virtual sessions that happened Monday through Thursday. So thank you to those who could make it. With our in-person event, if you were there, you saw lots of people out. We're predicting about 2,300 people came out to the event on the 18th. We were so grateful to come together and be able to do that. During the day, we offered space for meditation upstairs in the Union. We offered 15-minute quick wellness checks. We had 78 people participate in wellness screenings. We had a very active exhibit hall. It was a little bit smaller than previous years, and there was some additional spacing that we accommodated because of the pandemic, but we had a lot of activities going on in the exhibit space. We offered a medicine drop provided by UNC Police, and they collected 10 pounds of medications. We offered a variety of cooking demonstrations in person at the event, one during the week prior to the event, and we live streamed all of those cooking demos throughout the day, and we had about 120 participants. We had about 200 people engage in fitness sessions Monday through Friday. And then we had lots of games going on outside, some good dancing and music as well. So thank you all for coming out who were able to make it or to participate in any of the activities going on Monday through Thursday. There was an article in the newsletter that went out earlier this month. I encourage you to check that out. It has a link to some pictures that were taken at the event, and I'll send all this to Katie as well to share with you. So this month in April, as Joe had mentioned, planning for finances, that's something that we're focusing on this month. Today at noon, we have our Wellness Wednesday. That is a new topic, financial planning for life. So if you didn't sign up for that, send me a message in Microsoft Teams so I can get that link to you. Next week, we have a session on paying off debt while building wealth. So we're really focusing on managing our finances earlier this month. On the 20th, we have a session on managing staff through stressful situations. This session was held a variety of times last May. It was very popular. Whether you're managing or supervising anyone, I encourage you to sign up for this session on April 20th. And then on Thursday, the 28th, the State Office of Human Resources at 11:30 is hosting a session titled Benefits of Plant-Based Cuisine. So that will close out the month on the 28th. And all of these you can find on the HR events calendar. Now, Joe had mentioned with the telehealth being covered still, that means that Eat Smart, Move More, Weigh Less is continuing to be covered at no cost. Previously, if you're a longtime state employee, this is an online program now that is a 15-week weight management program. I know hundreds of UNC employees have already completed the program, and it is here to stay. It is continuing to be covered by telehealth, which previously it wasn't, but it is free for you with code GNC 2022. This was featured in our WorkWell newsletter as well earlier this month, so you can read more about it then. But the spring series are starting April 26th. They have Tuesday and Wednesday sessions available in the evenings as well in the afternoons, and they're hour-long weekly meetings for 15 weeks to help you get on track to your weight loss and physical activity goals. Speaking of which, I'm very happy to report we're about 3 weeks into the Miles for Wellness Challenge that's hosted by the State Office of Human Resources twice a year. This challenge will continue through May 8th, and it's touring the northern capitals this spring. UNC has 39 teams participating again. This matches our participation in fall of 2020 and more. We have more teams participating than all other universities combined, with our biggest competitor being UNC Charlotte with 16 teams, followed by NC State University with 11 teams. Other universities participating are UNC Asheville, East Carolina University, Appalachian State University, as well as the system office. So good luck to everyone who is competing in the Miles for Wellness Challenge. I look forward to sharing those results with you in May. And then May is, just to get on your radar, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I did want to remind everyone that there are virtual meditation sessions that happen every single Monday through the School of Medicine. They are hosted by Dr. Johnny Gherkin, he is a psychiatrist and an associate professor through the School of Medicine. And if you were able to come out and see his session, he did hold a lecture and a brief meditation session for us during our Employee Wellness Day, which was absolutely wonderful. So if you want to participate virtually in his meditation sessions, they're every Monday from 12:15 to 12:45. And you can email him directly at Johnny_Gherkin, and I'll send all that to Katie so you don't have to try to figure that out yourself. And I do want to remind you, if you've not heard already, there is an event on Friday hosted by Arts Everywhere. It's Arts Everywhere Day. You may have seen them at the Employee Wellness Day, and they were over there in a well-lit spot having people color postcards, and it was wonderful. The postcards are going to be displayed all day on Friday, and there's going to be a collective big campus scream in front of the Polk Place. I'm sure you'll hear it in the South Building, and that will be at 12:20 p.m. on Friday. So if you're able to come out, I encourage you to go out and visit Arts Everywhere. If you did not have an opportunity to complete your postcard, you can take that to them on the 8th and it will be displayed on the wall for all to see. No judgment with your artistic ability. It's just an outlet to express what everyone's gone through over the past 2 years. And then before I leave you today, the discounts that were highlighted this month in the newsletter were a savings of up to $19 per ticket on the NC Courage Challenge Cup home game, which is our local women's soccer team. That is Saturday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. So UNC employees can receive a special discount for those tickets. And then as we begin traveling again with the warm weather, today it's beautiful. Just know that you can receive a variety of travel discounts through your Working Advantage discount program. That includes discounts off the airline tickets, hotels, rental cars, and theme parks. So do encourage you to check out your Working Advantage discounts, and I will send that all to Katie. Questions for me?
Questions for Jessica or really for Becky, Joe, Link, etc. I know there's been a few questions answered in the chat already, but any folks have questions for our fabulous HR team today?
A big congratulations to Jessica, because I know she put in a lot of hard work on that fair.
Round of applause.
Thank you, Arlene.
Other questions? And thank you, Link, for doing that advocacy work, and Becky as well. I think it's really important that we put some pressure on the system to try and update those ranges, even though we know they're probably holding off in the hopes of implementing the new career banding system, but we are in need of a change sooner rather than later. So we appreciate your advocacy there.
Yeah, Katie, on that point, that's exactly right. I think that's been why they've been so resistant to trying to getting behind adjusting the ranges, but it's killing us. And yeah, we continue to push. System office continues to push, and hopefully we'll see some movement on it. But so far, we have not been successful.
Well, we're also carrying forward that advocacy at the staff assembly level, and we're putting some pressure on Matt Brody and his team as well. So all we can do is continue asking. So thank you. Shayna, your hand's up.
Just to clarify further on that note, we were told that they're about 18 months or longer out for the new system. Is that correct?
That's our understanding. There's not been a firm date that has been communicated to say this is exactly when we're moving, but the time that sounds consistent with what we've been hearing. Becky, I don't know if you've heard anything else through your task force meetings, but that seems consistent.
That's exactly right. It was higher on the list originally, and then the pandemic sort of pushed us out, and they are now refocusing on it, but they do seem to think it's 18 months or so out. And at this point in time, we keep sort of asking, like, okay, can we have some details of what happened in those 18 months? So like, how do we start planning for this? What are some things that we can do to prepare our community? And we just haven't gotten enough focus from the State Office of Human Resources just yet on that, but we're asking.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, folks. Any other questions for HR? No? We got some more time. I don't think Provost Clemens is here yet. So bring on your questions if you have them.
Mine's less of a question, more of an analysis of what we were just talking about. We had a guest speaker, I believe either the last full body or maybe it was an executive group meeting, but they were talking about how there's also another issue at the system level that a lot of the smaller universities are not necessarily on the same page with UNC-Chapel Hill, mostly because like we're a much more expensive area, so the cost of living is a lot higher than it is in certain other university affiliated groups, so that some of them are having difficulty keeping up with the pay band where we're pushing it out to the front. Is that accurate? Is that something that needs to be addressed at a more university system-wide kind of discussion? Because I can understand that, like, you know, here in Charlotte, yeah, you've got really expensive cost of living, maybe even in Nashville, but some of the smaller places may not have the same kind of cost of living. And I've been hearing stories about having difficulty hiring professors and TAs and staff.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And it plays itself out in a couple of different ways. On the EHRA roles in the IRIT and the tier 2 positions, we've had delegated authority as a campus to set our own ranges up until now. That's going to change under the new policy. The system office will take that over. And we, together with state, have been saying, we have some different needs than some of the other campuses. We need to make sure that we still have some range variance. Of course, the system office can proffer a little bit more authority to us than on EHRA roles than they can on SHRA roles. On the SHRA positions, we are pushing toward the top. There are campuses that are having a hard time, but the ranges tend to be broad enough that what I am hearing is they're having a much harder time getting people to market rate because they don't have the money to get to market rate. It's not that they can't get them to the lowest end of the ranges. It's just they can't get them to market rate. So when we talk about the desire to get to market rate or beyond, that's where the issue is. So it's not really that they're not getting people into the ranges, it's that they don't have the funds to get them all the way up. But that is a concern as we migrate to a new banding system. Are they broad enough that they address the needs of places like ours? Some of it is related to market, but some of it's also related to size and scope. So there are some SHRA roles where the people in those roles are just servicing larger numbers of people than they would be at a Western Carolina or elsewhere. So some of it's about market and some of it's about size and scope of duty. But that is part of the conversation that we will advocate for. And there are a couple of groups that the system is engaging, our HR Council standard group of CHROs across the system, and then a handful of others of us on some smaller groups to sort of think about ways that we might influence the discussions associated with that.
Great, thanks, Becky.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, a huge thank you to our whole HR team. We will send out those wellness updates as always to the listserv. I would like to welcome Provost Clemens to the call. Thank you for being with us today for our roundtable session where we hear from the Chancellor and/or Provost on administration updates and then have the opportunity to answer or ask our questions and for him to ask questions of us as well. That goes both ways. So welcome, Chris. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. So Katie, if you'd like, I can give some short updates on things that might be of interest, and then I'll take questions. I don't have a whole lot, and these are the same things that I'll be covering at the faculty council meeting on Friday. Our transition team is still working hard on making sure that we open as many access channels to this office as possible. We're being thoughtful about how to make really permanent, not just through the transition team and the emails that we've been receiving with recommendations, but in a way that institutionalizes more points of access, especially for staff, into this office. So we will come out with a reorganization plan and hopefully some permanent access points. So these may be to committees that exist already in some cases, because I know the chancellor has committees, but we need to hear what the chancellor hears over here too, and not just assume that information is always passed freely between various points. So we're just looking at how to make sure that happens. We will shortly be putting forward the approvals for some new positions. I had talked about this vice provost for faculty advancement and success. This is somebody who would replace part of what Ron is doing, but also allow us to expand in new directions around success and leadership for mostly faculty, but I think also we'll be looking at how to be more intentional about nominations for staff and students to make sure people are recognized for what they do. This person would sit on the HSAC and the APT committee, which is something Ron is currently covering. We will then get a cohort of faculty fellows in here who will work in the provost office, getting leadership training at the provost level under this new faculty advancement and success vice provost. So that's kind of that's part of the plan, and we'll have a new org chart that we'll shop here in the next couple months. There's a lot of searches going on. I've been meeting with the candidates under Joseph Jordan's leadership. You may know directors for the American Indian Center and the Women's Center are being hired. So I met with those candidates. I think we're done with interviews. So those should be wrapping up in the next few weeks. Dr. Jordan has also just announced the search for the new director of the Stone Center, which is his replacement. So that process is just starting. So I think if you have nominations to make, there was a call that went out for nominations, please do so. We are interviewing candidates now for the Dean of the College, College of Arts and Sciences, and the School of Public Health. We finished the nursing school search. We have an offer out and accepted, but we haven't made the announcement. So we will be getting a new dean there. We just are wrapping up some of the paperwork, making sure we have everything in order. We are still in negotiations with a very strong candidate for the Adams School of Dentistry. The candidate is a great negotiator, I will say that. And so we are making sure that we set the dean up for success there before we ink a deal. The search committee has been formed for the School of Government search, and we're about to finish forming the search committee for the librarian search. So I do spend a lot, I feel like I spend a lot of time interviewing candidates where we are right now at this moment in time, but it's a pleasure to do it. And I'll say, as we always have at Carolina, we are getting very good, very strong candidate pools. We're engaging as much of the campus as we can in the process, and we've had good engagement. And I'm very pleased with the conversations I've had. It's always interesting to have folks come with outside perspectives and be able to engage them around questions here and get their perspectives as part of this process. We're also interviewing the nominees for the academic lead of the new School of Data Science. So that's another process that's underway. You may get questions about the future of the tents. It is springtime. The campus looks great. I saw the groundskeepers out finishing the work around the Curtis Media Center. If you get a chance to walk that pathway that's been closed, they reopened it and immediately students are inundated the pathway. So it's now a concourse again. But you should stop by if you get a chance to look at that new building. It looks great. The undergraduate students, the Student Senate, passed a resolution last week, 103-377, calling for the removal of the tent on Polk Place and the restoration of the green space, which is kind of, as you know, a beach for many of our students in the summer. So I'm pleased to announce that that facilities and the tent builders and disassemblers will come after graduation, and the tents are going to be removed from campus. I hope that means the COVID era is still drawing down, but we will get back to green space, and that'll be restored. And the vista between South Building and Wilson Library on Polk Place will be reopened shortly after graduation. So, I'll take this opportunity to thank you all for your hard work along every dimension of the university. And I'll stop and take questions from you about whatever, if I can answer them, whatever you want to ask. If I know an answer, or we can engage in conversations if you have advice that I should be listening to.
Great, thanks, Chris. I know there's several questions from folks. I wanted to start us out with a question that I had. So you mentioned a new org chart for the provost office as you take up the role. I just was hoping maybe you could provide some clarity for us. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that there is a new interim chief administrative officer that's going to be taking on some of the administrative things. And I think that's Tom Shanahan. Is that correct?
Yeah, now that actually falls under the Chancellor's Office org chart. But yes, Tom Shanahan is going to be interim.
Can you kind of help clarify kind of the distinction there and the kind of like breakdown of like what everyone is going to be doing now? I think you've had some time in this role to figure that out for yourself, and it'd be great to hear from you on kind of what that's looking like.
Yeah, I mean, I can be specific about some of the stuff that's going on. In our office, the essential change is we've had Ron Strauss as the executive vice provost, handling a very broad set of matters. Perhaps one could argue too broad. So Amy Locklear-Hertel, who is now replacing him, and he's going to be here through June in the transition, is taking on part of that, but also expanding in some new directions that he didn't do around leadership and faculty HR, really. And then the new vice provost will be a senior rank tenured faculty so that they can take over Ron's role in the appointment, promotion, and tenure committee. And hopefully on the health affairs side, the health affairs promotions committee, HSAC. So that's the main change in our office. There'll be some moving of people. We'll sort people out between those two leads. And then we are talking about the Center for Faculty Excellence being raised in prominence and maybe becoming a vice provost level office, because we're expanding the scope of what they do. It turns out many of the things I've been saying about faculty leadership, they've already, in some cases in pilot form, using grants. They have an advanced grant for developing mentorship skills, especially in women faculty. But what works in that context will work for all faculty. So we're talking about taking some of the skills and programs they've developed and expanding their scope and maybe expanding the office's reach. So that's the kind of my office part, provost part. Tom Shanahan is working on a variety of administrative matters that have fallen through the cracks, if you like, but need attention. These are things like affiliation agreements between the medical school and the main campus affiliation of the university, basically, not the medical school, but the hospital and the main campus. Affiliation agreements between the hospital and the dental school. There's a whole lot of, I don't want to call it just legal work, but legal and administrative things that, if you do them right, make our life easier. And by not doing them intentionally and thoughtfully over time, we've made a lot of things very difficult that he can clean up. So he's looking broadly at delegated authorities, just as we're doing in this office for the whole university, trying to decide who the decision makers are for the key big questions that come to us, and making sure that everyone is understanding what lives at their desk. Because I think one of the complaints you hear is I ask questions or things need approval and they take forever, because sometimes no one knows which office has the final approval or whether the process is one that we fully have a standard operating procedure for. So that's what Tom is doing, is trying to clean up some of this and make it visible. So I think that's the main effort going on there.
Great, that's helpful. I mean, I just had heard through the grapevine that he was appointed to this role, and I don't think anybody really was made aware of that. So I think it'd be helpful for kind of, transparency's sake, that it be announced kind of what his new role is.
I think it was put in place as a kind of trial run, and that's probably why it wasn't announced. But I'll take your point, and I will pass that on to Kevin. I think Kevin will want to hear that, and then it'll be up to him to figure out how to frame that announcement to the campus. But thanks.
And I know a lot, like I said, a lot of that is still being worked out as you're coming into this role and things are kind of shifting and changing. But we would appreciate some of that transparency.
Well, I think that's exactly the kind of thing I want to hear from you in this forum. When there's buzz about something and we haven't addressed it, it's always much cleaner to say exactly what we're doing. And sometimes the answer will be is we're trying to get our act together. So I very much will admit that the first 2 months have been me trying to get my act together over here.
And I think we learned during the pandemic to provide some grace and empathy there as we kind of figure our stuff out. So
yeah, so I'll pass that on to Kevin as an action item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Arlene, your hand's up.
I was just curious what's going to be done with the tents and the tables and chairs. Were they rented, or is it something that the university will put into storage in case of events or emergencies again?
And another question before you answer, is it all of the tents or just the tent in Pogue Place? That was another clarifying question.
Yeah. I believe these were leased, and it is all of the tents. They're not cheap to keep paying rent on, but I think they'll go back to whoever provided them. And then, some of them were nearly destroyed in our snowstorm or whatever you want to call it. But I don't think we own them. I'm not 100% sure. I can find out if it's important to know, but I think we can always have them brought back by the same folks who put them up to begin with.
Chris, this is Rick. Can I just jump in to give clarification?
Please do.
Yeah, the tents were rented. And they were allowed to stand via a temporary structure permissibility from the state construction office. And that was extended through COVID times when we started with the physical distancing. And so these are considered temporary structures and by state statute need to come down also. There has been discussion around some of the chairs and some of that is our furniture. And so the chairs and tables we are thinking about because that can stay up in certain places where there's a patio or such, not on a green grass. And so we've looked at places like Lenore where the added seats have been helpful. So there are conversations going on where we could leave seats behind safely without the canopies remaining.
Great, that's helpful.
Thanks, Rick. My official story is we're being responsive to the resolution from these students.
Shayna, your hands up.
Hi, it's a delight to have you here. No one is happier than I am that you're here because the provost, the roundtable with the provost and the chancellor was one of my initiatives. So thank you very much for coming and sharing your time with me and with the group. You asked for buzz. So here's some buzz. I am thrilled to hear that the candidate pools are strong in the leadership roles, but I would like to share with you that the exact opposite is happening in the staff pools. Postings that normally get 50 and 60 candidates are getting 3 to 5. Even with external advertising, some of those are failing and having to be reposted. We just can't attract people here. And a lot of us that are left on this campus are trying to cobble together several jobs. And we want to be able to support these great new leaders coming in, but we're just dying here. So if you can strategize with us in any way, we know that we have seen salaries stagnant. We're very, very happy that there was some movement from the legislature this time around, but benefits have been dwindling. We just don't appear to be, an employer of choice right now, and we're struggling.
So Shane, can I dig in on that a little? Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for, creating the roundtables for everyone to participate in. But I'd like to just dig in a little. Is this broadly across every unit that we're seeing this? Is it
Yes.
focused in some? Are we getting feedback that it is pay, or is it a combination of things? You said benefits. I'd like to make as specific as possible a set of action items. I'm sure Becky has taken action items on this already, but at my desk, maybe there are things I can do if I understand it really, really well. So tell me the breadth and what we know from the candidates about. We may not know if they don't show up, why they didn't show up. But if it's money is the main thing, then I'll hammer that point with our stakeholders in the DOT and at the legislature.
So I think you're getting some responses in the chat.
Pay, and mostly pay.
We are representative of every classification on campus. So right. I think some experiential data is coming to you here. What I'm hearing at the staff assembly level is the same thing. It's pay and benefits. And, Dolly Parton provides full educational scholarships for her staff and the faculty of her staff. So can we look at some of these out of the box thinking benefits to try to look at ways to keep people here? We have a lot of talent in North Carolina, and the system needs us.
Yep.
So we just need to be able to attract them and retain them. And so we're at a crisis point.
Yeah, I'm looking at the comments now. So it sounds like some of it, so there's two reasons you might not pay enough. One would be you didn't have the money. The other would be you didn't have the flexibility in your HR classifications. And it sounds like it may be a combination of both. In some cases, we do have the money, but we don't have the authorization. In some cases, we don't have either one, or without the money, there's no reason to ask.
I think it's more broadly the classification structure at the state level is very limiting and it's outdated.
Okay. Well, I know Becky's probably commented on what's happening at the system office. There's been a kind of a swap of privilege here that she can explain. I wonder whether it's going fast enough, Becky. I do worry about workforce across the whole.
I think that the swap of authority is really important, but that really impacts our, as I mentioned earlier, our EHRA employees. I think a lot of really where I think we're feeling the most pain, and I think the turnover data and sort of the hiring challenges that many of you are talking about are showing up all over, but particularly among our SHRA employees. And part of that is the result of the ranges not being changed, and the conversation Link had just commented on in the chat, the state being unwilling to change the ranges before we move into the new system. And we continue to advocate on that. I've been on a number of calls recently with my colleagues at NC State trying to figure out if there are other things that we can do. As I mentioned earlier, I'm on a task force with the Office of State Human Resources. Link and his team have been working with a number of people. The challenge is right now, we as a campus have very little authority. So advocacy is our greatest resource in some ways. We're trying to stretch every area of the rules within the regulations we have to be able to keep people and hire people. But until we get the rules changed, we don't have as much latitude to address some of the very, very real problems people are raising. And it's a real concern for all of us in central HR as well. We know this is a problem. We're watching the pools be smaller. We're seeing failed searches and repeated searches. And the problem then isn't just that you don't have anyone to fill the jobs. It's that the impact is on the people who are here. You're doing more work, you're serving on search committees multiple times. The work is not an added competency, so you're not being compensated for it. And these are all parts of the structure that we don't have the authority to change. So we have a handful of things that we're doing in the advocacy piece. I sent a memo to Kevin not long ago, sort of saying, how can we work on this a little bit more? And there's a task force call later this afternoon. So it's not that things aren't happening, but to Chris's point, they're not happening fast enough.
So Becky, who does decide? I mean, what you're saying, I think, is we are going to some new system that may give us more flexibility, but in the changeover, they're refusing.
I wouldn't actually. So there are two pieces. The Office of State Human Resources decides, and I think it's probably an overstatement. And Link, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I wouldn't say that the new system is going to give us more flexibility.
Is it going to give us new ranges?
It's going to give us maybe different ranges, but it's still a competency-based system. The reason we're not in it now is when the state transitioned to the system originally, it was very worrisome about the way it was playing out. So the system office fought really hard to say, we're not moving into that. It was a really, really tough transition for state employees. And I can say things have gotten better over the few years that they've been in it, but it's by no means excellent. And we continue to express our concerns about having to go into that system. And the system office continues to express their concerns about having to go into that system. But absent any, like the Office of State Human Resources continuing to support our existing system, we don't have anywhere else to move. It's either go into their new system, or the Office of State Human Resources continue to support our own system, or the thing we probably should have done, and this is Becky Mangini, the individual citizen speaking, less in my role as Vice Chancellor, we should have created a system-based HR personnel system for university employees about a decade ago. And sure, even if we were to do that today, the point at which we would be able to migrate in a meaningful way is probably 6 or 8 years out.
So the Office of State Human Resources reports to the state treasurer?
I forget who it is.
Okay, I'll go look it up.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed. I think I'm not supposed as provost to do electioneering or anything like that.
Yes.
So let me just say, as a citizen in a kind of vague way, they need to get their act together, because my daughter is a school teacher. The same thing is happening as you may know, across the state in the very low paid middle school teaching and all the school teachers. There's a wave of retirements that is about to crash on that system as well. And so I don't understand what more needs to be clear to act than that we cannot hire, right? I mean that's so maybe it's about how we communicate back to that. So I will attempt to open a channel of communication to people in those high offices to see what I can learn. But it sounds like Kevin is doing that, system office is doing that. So I don't want to get in the way of what's already going on, I'm sure, in a thoughtful way. And I don't think me calling and pounding the table is probably the right approach. But it sounds like the more we can get the message to them that this is.
I think the more we have our senior leadership backing Becky and her team in these advocacy efforts and saying this is what we need in order to effectuate our mission here at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, I think the more voices we have coming at them and saying this is what we need will put pressure on them to make a change sooner rather than later.
Well, this is one of the roles our trustees should play.
Yeah.
Right. They have to look after the health of this university. If they're apprised of these issues, they can speak on our behalf as well. And I think they probably know this already. I know we've talked about it there, but maybe we need to keep raising the alarm a little.
And you should also know that one of the things we're talking to the task force about is if we cannot move ranges before we move into this new structure, could we get the capacity to do one-time bonus payments so that employees will still realize some dollars in their pockets? They may not be base adjustments, but we could at least have some authority to do some one-time adjustments now while we wait for the arrival of the new system. Again, it's not the perfect solution, but it's a solution that we think could put money in employees' pockets and help us retain people and still allow the Office of State Human Resources to abide by the things they want to do. So we're trying to figure out not just the ideal solution, but what are some steps that we could take in the interim before we have to get to, or before we can get to that ideal solution.
Okay. I'm just reading some more of the comments that have appeared too.
Yeah, I'll let you continue reading. Laura, your hand's up.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I know Stephanie's hand was up a few minutes ago and she put it down, but as chair of personnel, I imagine this is touching quite closely to her work. So I want to make sure she had the opportunity to talk or question something if she needed it before I ask a totally unrelated question.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Stephanie. So I wonder if you could give us an update on how things are going with the testing system now that we have shifted from our own internal COVID testing system to the external testing system. Is it getting used? Is it going well? I know I personally haven't tried it yet, just haven't overlapped with my working hours. So do you have an update that you could get for us on that?
I can give a partial update. I haven't actually read the last weekend's report, but what I saw before that is that it had been fairly seamless. It looks much the same to the students. I mean, the tool that you engage with it is slightly different because it's from the outside provider. We do still have students taking advantage of testing. It's hard to know how many folks are testing at home now that the paper script tests are. So I think we're less and less believing that the numbers we get from that are going to be representative of the larger population that may be testing and not reporting the results of the test. But it was getting used, and the numbers continue to look good for the campus. And if you want to know more, send me an email, because I can send you the report on we still monitor and get a Monday report, but unfortunately maybe it's a sign that COVID is loosening its grip. I didn't read the whole report when it came in my email, so I'll confess to not being able to read everything I get.
No, that's helpful, and thank you for sharing that. And I just wonder too, if you know, I think we're all really hoping for COVID to loosen its grip. Are there plans to stop testing on campus completely at some point? Are you aware of any of that?
Yeah, I don't think we've reached the point that we were talking about shutting it entirely down. We'll visit the question as we see how the semester ends and the summer develops. It is good that we're not having to run our own testing at the lower numbers, because you have to staff it at some minimal level, and it was expensive to do. So I think it made financial sense to go this way. But if there's any change, I'm sure it'll get announced by leadership well before we make any final decisions on how long to continue this. But as far as I know right now, it's going to continue for the foreseeable future.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Any other questions for Provost Clemens? And I think there's been some questions in the chat geared towards Becky, but
Katie, do you save the chat? And if so, can someone email me the chat?
Matt, can you make sure that we share that or save the chat, please?
Yes, I will do so.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll just say that when I came in and talked to you 2 months ago, I said part of what I want to do is be able to tell our awesome stories. I also want to be able, in your words, to say to people who ask me, what is the actual crisis in hiring or HR? I'd like to be able to reflect the comments here, which are real concerns about inflation, about the cost of living in Chapel Hill, which is escalating as rapidly as I think I've ever seen it, and I've been here 23 years. These are the concerns that need to be in front of folks who are making these decisions. So I want to read through them and get a little summary sheet that I can use if I'm in a call with someone who asks this question. So
we can get that the chat to you, as well as a recording of the meeting, if that's
thank you. Yeah, and if there are questions in there, I'll when I see them in the chat, I'll try to send you an email and answer.
So, thank you again for being with us today for the
no, thank you. Look, I hear what you're saying, and and like Becky, we obviously want to do our best for you. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating to hear these kind of bureaucratic answers that we're waiting to change a system and can't, it's not the answer that you want to hear. I know it's not. So I know Becky will continue to work, as will the chancellor, on that, and I'll add my voice to theirs.
Yeah, and thank you to Shayna as well for giving us these roundtables. I think they've really added some rich discussion and allow Chancellor Guskowitz and Provost Clemens to have that touch point with staff and to hear all of these concerns and have these conversations.
Yeah, and I'll pass the points on to him that I have for him. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, folks. Next up on our agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull committee reports from the consent agenda before we vote on the consent agenda, which includes March minutes that were sent out separately? I know I want to pull recognition and awards, and I think Laura has something also to add for that as well. So that one's going to get talked about, but any other committees that y'all want to talk about separately?
I have a brief update from staff assembly.
Okay, so staff assembly, recognition and awards, anybody else?
I can also do a brief education and career development.
Okay. All right, well, other than that, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda for April?
Arlene moves to approve the consent agenda.
Do I hear a second?
And Neel seconds.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, the consent agenda passes. We're going to start with recognition and awards. I wanted to give a quick update. The K. Winberg Hovius Outstanding Delegate Award process will be upon us soon. Matt will be emailing delegates, sending out the notice about voting. Just know there's no real particular criteria to consider when deciding who to vote for other than the name of the award itself, Outstanding Delegate Award. Of course, past winners cannot win again. And I think Matt's email will include a list of past winners for those to consider and make sure you don't vote for those people. But otherwise, be on the lookout for that email from Matt, and you can vote soon. I don't know exactly when. Laura, you had other updates for recognition and awards.
Yeah, so as you all likely know, Nataya has sadly left the university, which is a huge, giant bummer across all accounts. In her absence, Tiffany and I are, with Matt's expert assistance, leading the charge for this year's Recognition and Awards Committee. We are slightly behind Nataya's amazing schedule, but it's fine. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. We are still planning to open up nominations at the beginning of next week, and those will run till the end of April. We are looking for folks who are willing to read these outstanding nominations, who would be willing to review and advocate for who they think should be selected. So if this is something that you are interested in doing, the time commitment is hard to say. It's based off of how many nominations that we get, but the week that we're looking at reviewing these nominations is the first week of May. Yes, I know it's the week before graduation or the week of graduation rather, and that's terrible. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do about that. So I really hope you all will consider reading these amazing applications. If you want to be a reviewer, please email either me or Tiffany. I will throw our email addresses in the chat so we can get our group together. That's all.
Thank you both for volunteering to lead that effort. We really, really appreciate it. Please volunteer to help Laura and Tiffany out to process all of those nominations and work through that, given we've lost Nataya, our fearless leader, on the many years has taken on the recognition and awards front. So we will miss her, but Tiffany and Laura have got this. So thank you for that. Laura, you also wanted an education and career development update?
Yeah, because you haven't heard enough out of me today. So just briefly, we do plan on opening professional development grants up this month. That needs to get done. That will be getting done this month. And we will also open up applications for the Carolina Family Scholarship. If you aren't familiar with this scholarship, it goes towards dependents, children, primarily of employees of the university. How much it is really depends on how much we have in our budget, but it's approximately $1,000 or $2,000 for an academic year. So once applications for both Carolina Family Scholarship and professional development grants open up, you will of course get emailed.
Excellent, thank you. Shayna, you had a staff assembly update.
I just wanted to briefly let everybody know that we, for the past several years, the Chancellor's Cup Golf Tournament has been at Tobacco Road. Tobacco Road has raised their prices by $17,000 this year with very little notice. So the staff assembly is working very, very hard to bring the Chancellor's Cup Golf Tournament to one of the campus facilities. I worked on a quote for Findlay. I'm excited to report that Findlay is the lowest quote we have submitted to this point. Thank you, Jackie, for helping set up some connections. I've had several meetings. I would love to see the event here in September. The vote will happen next week. I cannot tell you what the full body will vote on, but fingers crossed, everybody. It would be great to have that event at Carolina. The second thing is I would like to try to bring a resolution to the staff assembly regarding the pay bands. If anybody is interested in working on that, I have a very tight turnaround. I think it's a really easy, short resolution. Please email me. I want to try to start the conversation next week at the chairs meeting. So please email me if you're interested in working on that resolution. Thank you.
Please loop me into that, Shayna. Keith, your hand's up.
Yeah, just to touch on what Shayna was saying about the golf tournament, not to get too deeply into it. If it is voted on and at Findlay, we will need the entire support of the employee forum. Just because there's been a whole lot going on and it's going to take a whole lot to get it moved to here. And if we get it moved here and we don't have the volunteer support, it will most likely never be here again, just to be honest. So just a heads up, we're going to push for it in our meetings for it to be here. One, because it's us, and two, because it is fiscally responsible for it to be here. But we are going to need your support. It is not until September though. Thank you.
Can I say something right quick?
Yeah.
Go for it, Dr.
So in
Streeter.
regards to the golf tournament, when it moved to Tobacco Road, it was supposed to be at Findlay in Chapel Hill. We were supposed to be the host school, but because they were doing stuff on the golf tournament, it was closed out. And that's how we ended up at Tobacco Road for the golf tournament. So it would be nice to just go ahead and bring it back. And then the other thing in regards to volunteers, it is considered work time, or you can get off to participate in it. So if it comes to Chapel Hill and the forum is the host, responsible for being the host, we can also open it up and ask for volunteers from the rest of the UNC community.
Great. Thanks for all of those updates, everybody. I think that's it for our consent agenda. New business. Oh, other things have been popping up in the chat as related to committee updates, so please feel free to read through the chat on some other updates. New business, we have 2 resolutions that we're considering for this month. Resolution 22-02, addressing serious retention, morale, and resource problems in university housekeeping services. This is our second reading of that. We read the first one in March. And then we also have resolution 22-03 concerning sexual assault and sexual harassment, since it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This is technically our second reading of this as well. The first reading was accomplished at our March 22nd Executive Committee meeting. So we're going to do both of those second readings now. Stephanie and Matt, I'm not sure if y'all want to kind of take the lead from here. I can share my screen, or you guys can share your screen. Either way works.
Thanks, Katie. I think if you could share your screen, that would be great. But I just want to see if anyone, I don't have to read both of these, so if anyone wants to read them, throw up a hand.
Definitely, I'll read the other one.
There we go. Never mind. Matt, have fun.
Okay, which
Okay,
one's
so
the other
housekeeping one first, is that correct?
Okay, so I can read that one, and then Matt, you can read the second one.
Okay, can everybody see my screen? Good.
Yes. Yep. And
is that big enough?
I'm gonna read it off my screen just so I can scroll, but that's just for everyone else. And Matt Banks, I just want to confirm the resolution posted on the site is the same as this, right?
Yes, I posted this updated version last week.
Okay, here we go. Draft resolution 2202, resolution addressing serious retention, morale, and resource problems in university housekeeping services. Resolution of the Employee Forum, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, April 6, 2022. Whereas housekeeping services, housekeeping staff are critical for providing a professional, clean, safe, and sanitary environment for the entire UNC-Chapel Hill community in support of the university's teaching, research, and public service mission. And whereas current housekeeping employees feel overworked, underpaid, under-resourced, and underappreciated for the work they do to keep the university safe. And whereas housekeeping has experienced chronic understaffing, including in the years before the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the persistent staffing shortages require remaining housekeeping zone managers and other staff to cover the workload of those who have left, resulting in single staff members covering the workload of 4 housekeepers. And whereas despite ongoing staffing shortages, remaining housekeepers were recently required to complete additional labor-intensive tasks such as cleaning the Dean E. Smith Center and manual snow shoveling. And whereas the tools and equipment required for housekeepers to successfully complete those additional duties are in limited supply, and subsequently at least one staff member had to bring their personal snow removal equipment to complete university work. And whereas staff who work more than 40 hours in a work week while responding to inclement weather, condition 2 or 3, are given compensatory time with no option for overtime pay instead. And whereas the workload left to remaining permanent staff and a revolving door of temporary employees has exacerbated staff burnout, low morale, and retention. And whereas zone managers have had to raise concerns to housekeeping facilities leadership regarding staffing, morale, equipment, and additional duties. And whereas the employee forum has also raised concerns about these issues to housekeeping facilities, finance and operations, and human resources leadership for the past 18 months. And whereas the current approach to staffing and coverage is unsustainable for remaining permanent staff given long-term staffing shortages. And whereas the current process for posting housekeeping vacancies consists of requests going from housekeeping leadership to facilities leadership and finally to human resources for review. And whereas housekeeping facilities leadership continue to post primarily temporary housekeeping positions, even though the UNC system and state of North Carolina have lifted the temporary quote unquote freeze on hiring permanent employees. And whereas despite the efforts of facilities and human resources leadership, the ongoing efforts to recruit, hire, and retain housekeeping staff fail to address the scale and scope of the problem. And whereas human resources has its own staffing challenges and lacks the capacity to help housekeeping. And whereas the employee forum is concerned there's a disconnect between frontline housekeeping employees and the chancellor and provost regarding the current situation in housekeeping. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the employee forum calls on the chancellor to 1, facilitate separate small group meetings with frontline housekeeping staff and zone managers with a mutually agreed upon facilitator in a safe, welcoming, and non-intimidating environment. 2, give housekeeping staff who work more than 40 hours in a work week while responding to inclement weather, condition 2 or 3, the option to choose either overtime pay or compensatory time. 3, ensure that housekeeping are only assigned additional housekeeping duties for which they have appropriate and adequate resources. 4, direct the leaders of housekeeping in coordination with facilities, finance and operations, and human resources to develop and implement a new plan by July 1st, 2022 to recruit, hire, and retain permanent employees to fill housekeeping vacancies. 5, fully fund and staff the housekeeping facilities and human resources teams to empower those units to implement the new plan. 6, commit to monthly meetings with housekeeping zone managers and frontline employees beginning in August of 2022 to ensure the housekeeping staffing problem is improving. 7, hold senior housekeeping facilities, finance and operations, and human resources leadership accountable for the implementation and outcome of this plan.
All right, great. Thanks, Stephanie, for reading that. I'd like to open it up for discussion on this resolution now. Any comments, thoughts, feedback, ideas, etc.?
Before we jump to those, I just want to thank everyone who worked on this resolution. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this in the forum, in our committee, in lots of other settings about this issue for a long time. And Matt and I received a lot of feedback from a lot of different groups. So just a big thank you to anyone who contributed to this work. This was a huge team effort.
And giant ditto to that, Stephanie. Jackie, your hand's up.
Yeah, I'll echo your comments, Stephanie, just to say thank you to everybody who worked on this. And then also just thank you to the housekeeping staff that continued to do your job, even though your conditions, your job duties are beyond what you should be asked to do. So thank you for keeping our spaces safe and clean. And we're really sorry that you're getting mistreated. And thank you for standing in your space while you're being mistreated.
Thanks for that, Jackie. Other discussion around draft resolution 22-02. Otherwise, do I hear a motion to vote on passing resolution 22-02?
I so move.
I second.
All in favor of approving resolution 22-02, resolution addressing serious retention, morale, and resource problems in university housekeeping services? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, resolution 22-02 has passed. Congratulations and thank you again to Stephanie, Matt, and the entire Personnel Issues Committee on working on this. And thank you to everyone else who contributed their voices to this really, really important resolution. Give me a few seconds to stop sharing my screen and reshare with the second resolution. All right. Okay, Matt, are you planning to read?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. So this is Resolution 22-03 concerning sexual assault and sexual harassment. Whereas it is the mission of the UNC-Chapel Hill Employee Forum to address constructively the concerns of UNC-CH employees and to continually improve the quality of life at UNC-Chapel Hill for its students, faculty, and employees through mutual understanding, recognition of employee contributions, and respect for the worth of the individual. And whereas the month of April has been designated Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the United States, with the goal of raising public awareness about sexual assault and educating communities and individuals on how to prevent sexual assault. And whereas sexual assault is having or attempting to have sexual contact with another individual without consent, and sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature or offensive remarks about a person's sex. Whereas members of the UNC-Chapel Hill campus community are primary or secondary victims/survivors of sexual assault and sexual harassment. And whereas sexual assault affects people of all genders, races, abilities, and sexual orientations, but disproportionately affects individuals aged 12 to 34, women, people of color, people with disabilities, and people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning and intersex. Whereas sexual assault and sexual harassment have a significant negative impact on our campus climate and undermine progress toward UNC-Chapel Hill's Strategic Plan Initiative 1, Build Our Community Together. And whereas every member of our campus community is entitled to live, learn, and work in an environment that is inclusive and welcoming. And whereas the Employee Forum has declared by resolution in 2008, 2011, 2013, 2015, and 2016 its unequivocal support for the continued development of strong measures to prevent and respond appropriately to incidents of sexual assault and sexual harassment on our campus. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Employee Forum reaffirms its commitment to a safe and inclusive campus community by annually recognizing April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, strongly supporting campus, local, and state efforts to prevent violence in all its forms, and connecting victims/survivors of sexual assault and sexual harassment with support and resources. Be it further resolved that the Employee Forum petitions the Equal Opportunity and Compliance Office, the Office of Human Resources, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, Student Affairs, UNC Police, and University Administration to continue to hold and promote Sexual Assault Awareness Month events, support prevention efforts of the university, including the work of the Violence Prevention Coordinators, the UNC Gender-Based Violence Prevention Advisory Group, and the recommendations contained in the group's Fall 2020 report, support the work of the Gender Violence Services Coordinators and Care for Victims/Survivors, assess the campus climate around issues of sexual assault and sexual harassment, including data collected through Clery Act reporting and cases filed with and investigated by the Equal Opportunity Office, make the findings of that assessment public and communicate about those findings, incorporate community feedback to maintain and annually update the university's policies related to gender-based violence and harassment and related training modules, and hold the perpetrators of sexual assault and sexual harassment accountable.
Excellent. Thank you for reading that, Matt. I'd like to open up comment and discussion on Resolution 22-03, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I'd like to start that comment by just stating, as it mentioned in this resolution further up, the Employee Forum used to do annual or mostly annual resolutions to this effect, honoring Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April. So this was an idea floated by Matt Banks, who is our trustee knowledge keeper of the past 30 years of the employee forum. So we appreciate this coming forward, Matt. Thank you for that. And I wanted to send a special thank you. Like I said earlier, Holly Lovern, who spoke with us first today, helped us to kind of refresh this language since we hadn't passed it since 2016 to make sure that this was kind of current, accurate, and spoke to the current campus situation related to this resolution. So comments, feedback, thoughts on draft resolution 22-03.
I have a question on procedure. And maybe I missed this, I'm sorry, I had to take a phone call for a minute. Is there a proposal out there about skipping second reading for this to make sure it gets approved in April?
We fulfilled our first reading at the executive committee meeting where we did the first reading of this. And I think Jacob, you confirmed that that was doable.
That's
yeah. Yeah, it still has to pass by the standardizations. We still have to get, we have attained a quorum for it to be passed, but the reading is not required that the full body be there basically, but that it does need to be posted so that the full body can have access to it. So we've met the requirements. And now that we've done a second reading, we are required to have the correct amount of votes. Like I think it's actually 2/3 for resolutions. But as long as it passes, we're fine.
Terrific. Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Yes, thank you to our trustee parliamentarian on that. Charles, your hands up.
So I wanted to ask the list of action items on the second page, is none of that currently being done whatsoever in any form or fashion?
It says administration to continue to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Great point though. Other thoughts, feedback on draft resolution 22-03?
Question, is there anything that is not being done that the university should be doing?
Matt, in your discussions with Ms. Lovern, did she say anything that she would like to be added to this?
No, the addition, I would say the biggest addition was the referencing that fall 2020 report. So I would encourage folks to pull that up and read through that, but there were she didn't bring anything up that she was like, we're not doing this and we desperately need to start doing it. It was more continuing to bring attention to this, ideally every month, every day, but particularly in April, and then having the university leadership continue to hold and promote those events.
I'm putting the link in the chat to that report. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else?
I've got one other thing. So I don't see it in here, but the now defunct Campus Safety Commission, we had some of these things. You can use that as a reference if you want to beef it up somehow or make reference to it. I can't remember exactly what now because it's been more than a year, but we did have some of these things under our purview and consideration, and it should be some feedback on it should be in our report if the website is still up. If it's not and you're interested, let me know and I'll get that to you.
We're glad to make that as a footnote, Charles. If you want to maybe send us an email or send Matt and Stephanie an email with where best to kind of.
Okay. All right. I'll do that.
Amend that. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've had one suggestion for a revision of adding a resource as a potential resource on the footnote list. Beyond that, do I hear a motion with that revision in mind to approve resolution 22-03 related to Sexual Assault Awareness Month?
This is Arlene and I so move.
Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor of approving resolution 22-03 concerning sexual assault and sexual harassment resolution of the employee forum?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, resolution 22-03 has passed. Thank you all for your work on this resolution and on the other resolution. We really appreciate it. We are at 11:30, right on the dot. I don't think this has happened in a long time. So do I hear a motion to adjourn for today?
This is Laura Pratt, and I move to adjourn.
Excellent.
I'll second that motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Well, thank you all, as always, for attending, and we'll see each other sometime soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Well done, good work.
Thanks as always, Matt. I appreciate it. And the provost is asked to pull the chat. Just, I would try and make sure that it's the publicly available chats that were sent to everyone.
Yes.
So
Oh,
it
you
might
mean-
take some redacting, is all I'm saying.
So redact the ones that are sent to
private individuals.
Okay, I'll do that.
And then,
Hello,
yeah.
I just want to say this is Timothy Carville. I was at the meeting all the time.
Hi, Tim.
I didn't speak up earlier. I was trying to get my microphone unmuted,
No
and it took a
worries.
while. But I just want to say I was present today.
We are glad
Wonderful.
to mark you as attending, Timothy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I hope you're doing well, Tim.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Good to see you, quote unquote. But yeah, so once the recording is ready, Matt, and posted on YouTube, we can send him the link to it, as well as the redacted chat for his reference and having a record of the feedback.
Okay, very good, very good. I will do that, and I will I'll work on redacting the chat right now or after lunch, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. But I would just save it in a Word document, and then you can work on revising it, because it's going to take some time, I would think, for the YouTube to be ready.
Yep.
So we can maybe email him first thing tomorrow or something.
Okay, very good.
All right. Well, thanks, Matt. I think we can also work on changing the language of the draft resolutions now that they are fully passed on both of those 22-02 and 22-03. So
yep.
You can update the website for those. That would be great.
And I'll transmit them as well, the chancellor. And,
awesome. That would be perfect. Thank you, sir. I think there's watermarks on them right now, but have you been sending them to the chancellor just as links to our website? Is that how you've been doing it?
I've been sending them as documents. I haven't these watermarked ones I can cut and paste and put it.
Yeah.
I put it on I'll make sure the watermark is gone.
Yeah, I would just make sure the watermark's off of it, but yeah. Awesome. All right, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Okay, take care. I'm ending the meeting, Tim.
Bye.
Bye-bye.